Welcome to Sleepy June. I'm reading a new book called Want You Dead by Peter James. Chapter 1. Wednesday, 23rd of October. Sorry. Carl Murphy was a decent and kind man, a family doctor with two small children whom he was bringing up on his own. He worked long hours and did his very best for his growing list of patients. The last 2 years had been tough since his beloved wife Ingrid had died, and there were some aspects of his work he found really hard, particularly having to break news to patients who were terminally ill. But it never occurred to him that he might have made enemies, and certainly not that there might be someone who hated him so much he wanted him dead and was planning to kill him tonight. Sure, okay, however hard you try, you couldn't please everyone, and boy did he see that at work some days. Most of his patients were pleasant, but a few of them tested him and the staff in his medical practice to the limit, but he still tried to treat them all equally. As he stood at the clubhouse bar on this late October evening, showered and changed out of his golfing clothes, politely drinking his second pint of lime and lemonade with his partners in the tournament, and glancing discreetly at his watch, anxious to make his escape, he realized for the first time in a long, long while he was feeling happy and excited. There was a new lady in his life that hadn't been dating for long, but already he had grown extremely fond of her, to the point that he had thought today out on the golf course that he was falling in love with her. But being a very private man, he said nothing of this to his companions. Shortly after 6, he downed the remains of his drink, anxious about the time, quite unaware that there was a man waiting outside in the blustery darkness. His sister Stephanie had picked the kids up from school today and would be staying with them at his home until he arrived with a babysitter. But she had to leave by 6:45 p.m. latest to go to a business dinner with her husband, and Carl could not make her late for that. He thanked his host for the charity golf day, and his fellow teammates in turn congratulated him for playing so well. Then he slipped eagerly away from the 19-hole drinking session that looked set to go on late into the night. He had something that he wanted to do very much more than get smashed with a bunch of fellow golfers. However pleasant they were, he had a date, a very hot date, and the prospects of seeing her after 3 days apart was giving him the kind of butterflies he had not had since his teens. He hurried across the car park through the wind and rain to the far end where he had parked his car, popped open the boot and slugged his golf bag inside it. Then he sipped the small silver trophy he had won into a side pocket of the bag, totally preoccupied with thoughts of the evening ahead. God, what a ray of sunshine she had brought into his life. These past 2 years since Ingrid had died had been hell, and now finally he was coming through it. In the long bleak period since her death, he had not thought that would ever be possible. He didn't notice the motionless figures all in black who lay beneath the tartan dog rug on the rear seat, nor did he think it odd that the interior lights failed to come on when he opened the driver's door. It seemed that almost every day another bit of aging Audi ceased working, or like a fuel gauge only functioned intermittently. He had a new A6 on order and would be taking delivery in a few weeks' time. He settled behind the wheel, pulled on his seatbelt, started the engine, switched on the headlights. Then he switched the radio from Classic FM to Radio 4 to catch the second half of the news, drove out of the car park and along the narrow road beside the 18th fairway of Haywards Heath Golf Club. Headlights were coming the other way, and he pulled over to the side to let the cars pass. As he was about to accelerate forward, he heard a sudden movement behind him. Then something damp and acrid was clamped over his mouth and nose. Chloroform, he recognized from his medical training. In the fleeting instant that he tried to resist before his brain went muzzy and his feet came off the pedals and his hands lost the grip on the wheel. Chapter 2, Wednesday night, 23rd of October. He held his binoculars to his eyes in the darkness, focused on the woman he loved so much, the night sight for his crossbows, which he used to keep watch on her when she turned on the lights, lay on the table beside him. She was drinking a glass of white wine, her fourth tonight, and dialed a number on her phone again, looking anxious and edgy. With a brief toss of her head, she flicked her red hair away from their pretty face. It was something she always did when she was uptight or nervous about something. He won't answer. My love, my sweet. Really, he won't. Chapter 3, Wednesday night, 23rd October. God, man, what was wrong? What was it, her? Them? There are some things you do in life, Red thought, that are really, really dumb. They don't seem that way at the time. It is only when they go wrong you realize it had taken her 2 years of ignoring the advice of her family, her friends, and ultimately the police. 2 years before she had realized just how dangerous Bryce Laurent, the man she had met and fallen in love with from her Lonely Hearts advert, was. If she could only wind the clock back 2 years with the knowledge she had now, please God, she would never have joined the online dating agency and certainly would not have placed that stupid message on it. Single girl, 29, redhead and smouldering. Love life that's crashed and burned. Seeks new flame to rekindle her fire. Fun friendship and who knows, maybe more. Most of the replies had been complete dross. But then she had been warned by her girlfriends that a lot of the men who replied to these things were liars, married guys after a quick shag and not much else. Well, she had replied to those friends who wasn't interested in a quick shag, but she could do with a long shag. That wasn't something she'd had for most of the years she had wasted on the introspective dickhead Dominic, who was normally back to checking his emails 30 seconds after a 30-second bonk. Besides, Red had reckoned she was smart enough to tell the difference between the shysters and someone decent. Wrong. Very badly wrong. Even more wrong at that moment than she knew. She was unaware that she was being watched. As she took another sip of Sauvignon Blanc and listened to the phone, counting each ring, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then voicemail was 8:30. He was an hour and a half late for the day. Where the hell was he? She hung up without leaving a message this time, feeling angry and hurt. Chapter 4, Wednesday night, 23rd of October. Van was a man. Oh yes, indeed. Van Morrison's Queen of the Slipstream was blasting from his big black jawbone speaker, flooding his tiny palm with all those beautiful words he had once felt about Red. The grumpy old shithead above him banged on the ceiling with his walking stick, as usual when he played his music late at night, but he didn't care. She had been the queen of the slipstream, his queen of hearts, Red, the colour of the queen of hearts, and she had rejected him and humiliated him. Did it hurt? Oh yes, it hurt. Every minute of every day, every night, every second. He had been lucky to get this apartment with the view it had. Some things were meant to be, like he and Red had been meant to be. Taking the binoculars from his eyes, he rocked his head from side to side, fury twisting inside him. Okay, some bad stuff had got in the way of their relationship, but this was all history now. It was too far gone. He watched her cute lips as she took another sip of her wine. Lips he had kissed so tenderly, so passionate. Lips he had drawn in the cartoon sketches he had made of her. One of which of her lips, pouted in provocative smile, was framed on the wall. It was captioned, "I'm a 5-a-day gal." Lips that had kissed every part of his body. The thought of these lips kissing another man was too much to bear. They were his lips. He possessed them. The thought of another man touching the soft skin of her body, holding her naked, entering her, was like an endless bolus of cold water surging through him. The thought of her eyes meeting another man, just as she climaxed, made him shake with a helpless rage, but not so helpless anymore. Now he had a plan. If I can't have you, no one will. He closed the curtains and turned the lights back on. Then he continued to watch her for some moments on one of the screens on the back of monitors on the wall. She was redialing, bugging her. Phone had been simple with a piece of software, Spy Bubble, that he had bought over the internet and secretly installed on her mobile phone. It enabled him to listen to all her conversations wherever she might be and whether she was using the phone or not, as well as receive automatically or text to and from her the numbers of every call she made or received, all the websites she looked at, all her photographs, and very importantly, through GPS, know her exact location all the time. He stared around at the framed photographs of himself covering the walls. There he was in a pink Leander jacket, wearing a straw boater at the Henley Regatta, looking pretty much like a young George Clooney, with Red on his arm in a floaty dress and a huge hat. There was another of him in a leather flying helmet in the cockpit of a Tiger Moth, a studious one of him in the air traffic control centre at Gatwick Airport, another of him looking rather fetching in a mortarboard and gown at his graduation from the Sorbonne in Paris, another also in a mortarboard and gown of him being awarded his doctorate from the School of Aviation in Sydney. There was one he particularly liked of himself in his firefighter uniform. Next to it was one of him shaking hands with Prince Charles, another shaking hands with Sir Paul McCartney, impressive enough for a queen. and she had rejected him. Poisoned against him by the lies of her family, poisoned by her friends. How could she have listened to them and believed them? She had destroyed everything through her own stupidity. He turned the music up, drowning out the thoughts raging in his head, and ignored another blam 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 on the ceiling from Mr. Grumpy. Then he picked up his binoculars again, switched off the lights, made his way over to the window, and opened the curtains a fraction. It was much nicer to watch her in the flesh, rather than on the screen, showing images with sound from every room in her place. He could feel her pain better that way. He looked out and down towards the second floor window across the alley. Her living room lights was on, and he could see her clearly. She was holding her phone to her ear and looking very worried. So you should be. 5. Wednesday night, 23rd of October. Don't do this to me, please, Red said, as the mobile phone went again to voicemail after 6 rings. Hi, this is Carl. I can't answer just now, so leave a message and I'll call you right back. She left 3 messages and still he had not called right back. The first one had been at 7:30, half an hour after the time he said he would pick her up. Then they planned to have dinner at the China Garden. She left a second message at 8 and a third trying to not to sound angry, which had been hard shortly before 9. It was now 10:30. She had even checked her Twitter message and Facebook page, although Carl had never before used them to communicate with her. Terrific, she thought. Stood up. How great is that? Splitting up with Bryce had been a nightmare that still stayed with her in those first few weeks after she had thrown him out. With the help of the police, she would often come home to find his Aston Martin parked right outside her old flat. He would be nowhere around, but the sight of the car was enough to give her the creeps. He'd stopped doing it after the time she had got really pissed off at him and let all 4 of the tires down. But even after that, sometimes during her solitary training runs for the Brighton Marathon in aid of the Samaritan, she would spot him watching her, always from a distance, either on foot or in a moving car. For a while he had put her off, particularly the evening runs she used to love across the downs in the falling darkness, on the advice of the people she had talked to at the sanctuary scheme. She had moved out of her flat into this temporary accommodation, rented under an assumed name they had given to her. The second floor flat, chosen for its position, had no window that were visible from the main road and a reinforced front door. It was in a gloomy, tight, converted Victorian mansion block that had once been a grand private residence close to Hove Sea front. Her view from all the main windows was out onto the fire escape of an ugly 1950s apartment block across a courtyard, an alleyway that led to the car park and locked up garages behind her building. Although she was meant to feel safe here, the place depressed her. It had a narrow hallway, dimly lit, that led through into a small open dining area with an old-fashioned kitchen that was little more than a gallery, separated by a breakfast bar. There was a small bedroom off the hallway that she had made into her den, and a larger bedroom with a window that looked down into the locked-up garage and wheelie bin store at the rear. She'd given the whole place a lick of white paint, which had brightened it a little, and I hung some pictures and family photographs, but it did not feel like home, and never would. Hopefully she would be out of here soon and moving into her dream flat, thanks to the sale of her old place going through and some financial help from her parents with the deposit. It was airy and spacious on the top floor of the Royal Regent, a Regency House conversion on Marine Parade in Camp Town, with a huge sunset of a balcony facing the English Channel and fabulous views of the marina to the east and Brighton Pier to the west. She had been advised by the police not to drive her beloved 1973 convertible Volkswagen Beetle, as it was too conspicuous. So it now sat forlornly in a locked-up garage she had rented nearby, and she took it out only very occasionally to keep the battery charged and everything turning over. She poured the last of the bottle of Sauvignon Blanc she had opened earlier, when it was obvious she wasn't going anywhere tonight with Carl. Men, she thought angrily. Sodly, bloody men. But this was so out of character after the nightmare of these past years that she had been through. Carl Murphy had seemed a total breath of fresh air. She'd been introduced to him by her best friend Raquel Evans, a dentist. He was a doctor in the same medical centre as Raquel and a recent widower. His wife had died from cancer 2 years back, leaving him with 2 small boys. According to Raquel, he was now ready to move on and start a new relationship. Raquel had been feeling the 2 of them might hit it off, and she'd been right. Early days, but they'd have dinner a few times, and then last Saturday with his son, staying overnight with his late wife's parents. They slept together for the first time and spent much of Sunday together. Carl had told her with a big grin that he must be quite sweet on her to have sacrificed his regular Sunday morning golf game. It was a little bit early in the relationship to have a golf widow, Red had replied with an equally big but pointed grin. They'd spent Sunday morning in bed, then they'd gone to the Brighton shellfish and oyster bar under the King's Road arches for seafood brunch of oysters and smoked salmon, followed by a blissful long walk along the esplanade. In the late afternoon, Carl had left to go and collect his boys, and they'd arranged the next date for tonight, Wednesday. He had planned to take the day off to play in a golf tournament and would be over straight after. He had said to pick her up at 7 p.m. So where was he? Had he had an accident? Was he in hospital? He hadn't told her which golf course he was playing at, so she had no idea where to begin phoning. She suddenly realized how little she actually knew about him, despite having checked him out, and probably how little about her he had told anyone. She toyed with phoning the police, asking if there had been any accidents, but dismissed that. They heard enough from her over the past few years, with her frequent 999 calls after yet another one of Bryce's violent attacks. The hospitals, excuse me, I'm calling to see by chance Dr. Carl Murphy has been admitted. She realized, though, from her past experience with men, that she was probably being too charitable. He was more than likely pissed, propped up at the bar at the 19th hole of some clubhouse, and had forgotten all about her sodding men. She drained her glass. Her fifth counted the man watching her. 6. Wednesday night, 23rd of October. He continued to sit in the darkness, his binoculars to his eyes. She was still wearing a wristwatch that looked like it had come out of a Christmas cracker. What kind of a cheapskate was Carl? Her wonderful new lover had not to have brought her a more expensive one. She returned the Cartier tank watch he'd given her, along with all the other jewelry, when she dumped his bags out on the street and changed the locks on him. Everything except the thin silver band on her right wrist. He drew the curtain shut and switched the lights on again, then sat at the small round table and picked up a deck of cards. He fanned them out with just one hand, snapped them shut, then fanned them out once more. Practice. He needed to practice several hours a day, every day, and on his existing repertoire of tricks. Tomorrow he had an important gig, performing his close magic table to table at the Brighton estate agent's dinner. Maybe Red would be there. He could give her a nice surprise. Now you see the Queen, now you don't. Once my Queen, still wearing the bracelet I gave you. He knew what that meant. It was very Freudian. She needed to hang on something he had given her, because even though she might refuse to admit it, she still loved him. I bet you're going to want me back, aren't you? Won't be long until you come begging, will it? You really do find me irresistible, but you don't realize that all women find me totally irresistible. Just leave it. Don't leave it too long, because I won't wait for you forever. Just kidding. I wouldn't take you back if you came crawling and begging. You and your hideous family and your ghastly friends. I hate the whole shitty little world you inhabit. I could have freed you from all that. That's your big mistake, not to realize that. He looked at his watch. 11:10 p.m. Time to rock and roll. He placed his mobile phone on the sitting room table and picked up the keys of the rented Vauxhall Astra. He had parked it in his locked-up garage 2 streets away and fitted it earlier with false number plates, copied from an identical car he had found in the long stray car park of Gatwick Airport. Then he donned his black anorak, checked the pockets to ensure he had everything he needed, pulled on his black leather gloves, tucked a black baseball cap low over his face, and slipped out into the night. 7. Wednesday night, 23rd of October. Carl rolled around inside the pitch dark carpeted boot of his car. He had a blinding headache, and he was shaking with fear and with anger. He was determined not to panic, breathing steady, calming breaths through his nostrils, doing his best to think clearly, to work his way out of the situation. He was trying to figure out where he was and how long he had been here, and why the hell this happened to him. Mistaken identity, or had his assailant taken his keys and was now robbing his house, or worse, going after his beloved children, Dane and Ben. Jesus, what the hell must Red be thinking? She was at home waiting for him to pick her up. If he could only phone her, but his phone was in his trouser pocket and he was unable to move his hands to get to it. He occasionally heard a vehicle passing and guessed he had to be somewhere near a country road. They were becoming less and less frequent, which indicated it was getting later. Whoever had done this to him knew about bindings. He was unable to move his legs or his arms or spit the gag out of his mouth, and he was suffering painful cramps, nor did he know, and this frightened him a lot, how airtight the boot was. He was just aware that the faster he breathed, the more oxygen he would use up. He had to stay calm. Sooner or later, someone would rescue him. He had to make sure the air lasted. His mouth was parched, and he had long since given up trying to cry for help, which made him choke on the gag, held tightly in place by some kind of tape, which felt as if it was wound all the way around his head. For Christ's sake, there had to be a sharp object in here somewhere, surely something he could rub against and use to saw through his binding. He nudged closer to his golf bag, hearing the clubs rattle, and slid his arm bindings up against the edge of one of the irons, but each time he tried, the club just spun around with loud retraction. "Help me, please, someone!" He heard the roar of a car and the swish of tires on the wet road. Hope rose in him, then his sound receded into the distance. "Someone stop, please." He heard the roar, then another engine, the swish of passing tires, then the squeal of brakes. "Yes, oh God, yes, thank you." Moments later, he felt a blast of cold air as the boot lid raised, a blinding light in his eye, and his joy was shortly. "Nice to see you again, my friend," and said a suave male voice from behind the light. "Sorry to have kept you. I've been a bit tied up, but not as much as you, eh?" Carl heard the sound of something metal striking the ground, then a liquid sloshing around. He could suddenly smell petrol. Terror swirled through him. "You're a doctor, aren't you?" the suave voice said. Carl grunted. "Do you have any painkillers on you?" Carl shook his head. "Are you sure? None anywhere in your car? You're a doctor. Surely you must have some." Carl was silent, trembling, trying to figure out what the hell this was all about. "You see, doctor, they're for you, not for me. You'll be better off taking some. With what's about to happen to you, please understand this is not your fault. I'm not a sadist. I don't want to see you in agony. That's why the painkillers." Carl felt himself being lifted clumsily out of the boot, carried a short distance, then dumped down on wet grass. Then he heard the slam of his boot lid closing. "I'm going to need you to write a note, Carl, if that's okay with you." He said nothing, squinting against the bright light of the torch. "It's a goodbye note. I'll free your right arm so you can write it. Are you right-handed?" The doctor continued stared, blinking into the beam. He was close to throwing up. The next moment there was a searing pain on his face as the tape was ripped away. Then the gag was taken out of his mouth. "That better?" the captor asked. "Who the hell are you? I think you've got the wrong person." "I'm Dr. Carl Murphy," he pleaded. "I know who you are. If you promise not to do anything silly, I'll free your writing arm, left or right." "Right. Now we're making progress." Carl Murphy saw the squint of knife blade, and moments later his right arm came free. A pen was thrust into his hand, then a sheet of lined notepaper was held in front of him. It was from a pad he recognized that he kept in his medical bag in the car, clamped to a clipboard. He caught a glimpse of his captor, all dressed in black, and a baseball cap pulled over his face. The next moment he felt himself being dragged across the grass and propped up against something hard and unyielding, a tree trunk, the clipboard with the torch shining on it. It was placed in front of him. "Write a goodbye note, Carl." "A goodbye note to who?" "To who? Tut tut, Dr. Murphy. Didn't they teach you grammar at school? To whom?" "I'm not writing any damn notes to anyone. I'm not writing any damn note to anyone," he said defiantly. His captor walked away. Carl shrugged, tugging desperately at his bindings with his free hand. Moments later, his captor returned, holding a large dark object. He heard the sloshing liquid. The next instant, he felt liquid being poured all over his body and smelled the unmistakable reek of petrol again. He squirmed, trying to roll away. More petrol tipped over his head and face, stinging his eyes. Then he saw in the beam of the torch a small plastic cigarette lighter held in a gloved hand. "Are you going to be a good boy, or do you want me to use this?" A tidal wave of terror surged through him. "Look, please, I don't know who you are or what you want. Surely we can discuss this. Just tell me what you want. I want you to write a goodbye note. Do that and I'll go away. If you don't, I'm going to flick this and see what happens." "Please, please don't. Listen, this is a terrible mistake. I'm not who you think I am. My name's Carl Murphy. I'm a GP in Brighton. I lost my wife to cancer. I have 2 small children who depend on me. Please don't do this." "I know exactly who you are. I won't do anything if you write the note. I'm going to give you exactly 10 seconds. Write the note, and that will be the end of it. If you never, and you'll never see me again." Over the countdown starts. 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay. Carl Murphy screamed. "I'll do it." His captor smiled. "I knew you would. You're not a fool." He straightened his clipboard and stood over him. A car was approaching. Carl stared, desperately hoping it might stop. A thicket of trees and shrubs, and the man's handsome face was fleeting illuminated. Then he could hear the sound receding to the distance. Thinking hard, Carl began to write. When he finished, the clipboard was snatched away. He saw the torch beam jigging through the trees, and again, alone in the darkness, tried desperately to free himself. He felt a twinge of hope as he picked up the plastic tape, and a small amount came free, then tore away. He dug into his fingernail, frantically trying to find the join again. Then the torch beam reappeared through the trees. Moments later, he found himself being hoisted into the air, slugged into the captor's shoulder in a fireman's lift, and carried away unsteadily into increasing darkness. Put me down, he said. I did what you asked. His captor said nothing. Look, please, I need to phone someone. She's going to be right about me. Silence. The journey seemed like an eternity, occasionally lit by the stabs of the torch beam into the wooded undergrowth ahead. Please, whoever you are, I wrote the note. I did what you asked. Silence. Then his captor, shit, you're a heavy bastard. Please put me down. All in good time. A short while later, Carl suddenly felt himself being dumped into long, wet, prickly undergrowth. Arrive. Hope rose in him as he felt his captor begin to loosen and remove his remaining binding. Thank you, he gasped. You're very welcome. As his legs finally became free, although numb, he gave a sigh of relief. But it was short-lived. He saw his captor step out of his overalls and discard them on the floor, and an instant later he felt himself being shoved hard over into his side, then shoved again, and he rolled over and over down a steep slope for just a few minutes before he felt himself squelch on his back into mud. Then a waterfall of liquor was tumbled into his face and all over his body. Petrol again, he realized, in almost paralyzed terror. He tried to sit up to haul himself to his feet, but the petrol continued to pour down. Then in the darkness above him he saw the tiny flame of a cigarette lighter. Please, Carl screamed, his voice stammering in fear. Please, no, you promised. I wrote the note. You promised. Please, no, you promised. I lied. Suddenly, Carl saw a sheet of burning paper. For an instant it floated like a Chinese lantern high above him, then sank, floated from side to side. The flame increased as it fell. Bryce Lawrence stood well back. An instant later, a ball of flame erupted, rising above him into the darkness. It was accompanied by a dreadful howl of agony from the doctor, followed by screams of help that deflated into seconds into choking gas. Then silent. It was all over so fast. Bryce felt a tad disappointed, cheated almost. He would have liked Carl Murphy to have suffered much more. But hey, shit happened. He bent down, picked up his overalls, which reeked of petrol, and walked back to his car. Thanks for listening.